Hi, this is Steve Moore. I'm coming to you here from Southern Ohio, continuing our dialogue about the challenges that businesses, small businesses in particular in this area, are facing with the COVID-19 crisis. The topic we want to focus on today is actually really the economic impacts of the COVID-19 to businesses, and in particular, I want to start our dialogue on how we get out of this and what we really see are the changes to the business plans and models that we maybe need to have as a result of getting out of this. But we are going to get through this, and we know we are. So I'm here with Bryce, and we'll continue to try to figure out what problems we can solve.
Yeah, and I think what's happening, for me and for everyone is there's the reality we want and there's the reality that we have. Yeah. And there are two words that I want to ask you to bring up and talk about, because the reality we want is a date where this all ends. And I don't know that anyone can, actually I do know that no one can give that. So the reality we have is that the setup our economy is facing for a recession and then a possible depression to follow. Sure. And I would love for you to define those two words specifically so people can remove, because for me, I think of the Great Depression. Sure. I'd love to hear your perspective, the definition of those words, as well as what it means if that is the reality we face.
So important things, and I'm not an economist, but I can give you the general definitions, but it's also the realities, right? So the reality is we can put titles and names on stuff, but this is just where we are. So we are likely, in my opinion, headed into a recession. That's generally, from economic standpoints, 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, negative GDP growth.
Well, and to define it, though, not just your opinion.
That's kind of the technical definition that economists use, is 2 consecutive negative quarters. I think for practical purposes of where we're at, knowing the way our U.S. economy works, we're kind of at the end of the first quarter. And I think by most accounts, for people who have money in the stock market and others, they would probably claim the first quarter is certainly not a good quarter. And I think with where we're at, as we've talked about, not knowing the dates of this outcome or anything else, I think we could also probably say the second quarter is not going to be terribly good either.
Was the first quarter defined by economists as a recession or no?
No, it would take 2 consecutive quarters for that to happen, but it's a negative growth.
Right. Okay.
We won't technically; they won't produce those numbers, the gross domestic product numbers for several weeks after the quarter. Okay. But again, I think this is where people are thinking in a general sense. Right. It's hard to imagine, right?
But there was positive growth in the first
quarter was awesome, and it's hard to imagine that the second quarter is going to be awesome. So, and then a depression is essentially just a continuation of negative growth. Could be 3 quarters, 4 quarters, or whatever.
So is it essentially anything after 2 quarters of negative growth?
That's how most economists will define a depression.
And that's by definition correct. Depression. That makes sense.
Those are terms, right? And part of this dialogue is making sure people don't get scared of terms. I mean, the reality is that's just what it is. We're in uncharted territory here. These are very unique times. The other things that most economists will say is that, and if you look, we had a recession back in 2008 and those time frames as well. But those were kind of events, and there's a gradual in and a gradual out. I think again, most people talk about a V shape or a U shaped curve. And again, I'm not an economist, and I don't want us in this community to get too worried or concerned about that. I think most people think that the economy is going to come out of this quickly, as opposed to maybe your grandparents' definition of depression back, in the 20s and 30s, that took years. We got into this fast. I think we're going to get out of this fast. So I think the realities are those terms are what they are, and I know people are concerned about that. So to me, it's just understanding what those mean. But to me, it's more important for us to think about what we're going to do in anticipation of coming out of it.
Well, yeah, and I think that is the point of bringing up the reality that we face and bringing up these words and hopefully educating people on what the technical definitions are. That it doesn't necessarily it doesn't mean what your mind may pull back from the past. However, how important is it for people to start getting prepared, and what does it look like to start getting prepared in your business for these words? What
Right. And again, taking a step back, look, none of us caused this. 2 months ago, we wouldn't even be needing to define these words, right? I mean, these are things that we're not even thinking of. So this is not in any way, a reflection of our business enterprises and the community. This is the circumstances that we're under. So the reality, though, is when difficult times, categorize them as a recession or just a bad couple of months or whatever, it really does force businesses to be very introspective, right? So in my analogy is a couple months ago, I've got a broad spectrum of businesses, they're all basically doing good. If I, thought to myself, hey, there's probably with my construction business, maybe I could have a better supplier of raw materials, I could get some better pricing on stuff. A couple months ago, I'm like, life is good. If it's not broke, don't fix it. With these types of times, now's the time to say, am I really as efficient in all the areas that I need to be? Because it is difficult. It is hard. So again, there's nothing positive from what we're going through. This is a set of circumstances that is uniquely challenging on this country. But at the same time, we can take this opportunity to really reset and refocus ourselves as business owners and as entrepreneurs on how do we create efficiencies? How do we come out of this stronger and healthier than we were before? And that's a process that I think I really encourage people in this community to go through, because we need to not just be frustrated with the circumstances that we're in. We need to try to do everything we can to make the most out of them, and we have opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and it's certainly scary, and I think that there's a lot of thoughts that everyone has to work through in order to figure out what that next step is for them. But in terms of being prepared and really taking a step back from what's happening, what do you think is the step that people can kind of run themselves through, maybe an exercise that you do yourself in terms of making this actionable for small business owners in Southern Ohio? What type of processes and efficiencies is a possible thing that they can focus on in terms of when or if something happens again, that they can maybe be more prepared even for that?
And again, from what I'm encouraging people to do, one, because it's very valuable, and two, because frankly, we need to keep exercising our brain and not watching too much cable news and everything else, is to really start looking at scenarios and start saying, look, let's assume that we're going to start back on, and pick your day, June 1st, July 1st, whatever, and start looking at your budget and the resources that you've got right now and what you project those things are going to be, knowing that the way they were isn't going to be the same, and making some assumptions that say I'm going to start off with 50% of the revenue that I had before. What's the staffing that I need to do that? We've got a lot of relief measures and a lot of things that we've talked about in the past that are in place to keep everybody going forward in the right way. But as we come out of that, we need to make sure we're scaling ourselves right and everything else. There's another really, from my perspective, a really big issue in that exercise, which is unlike the mortgage crisis of 2008 and some of these other large economic events. Those things happened, and then we kind of came out of them. This, I believe, is going to have, some societal behavioral changes. So I really encourage all business owners in this area to take a hard look at their business plan. So there's the whole, is this a recession or not, and how do I need to scale myself? That's an exercise that you have to go through. But the other thing is, let's think about what's happening to us as a society right now. I think there's going to be two groups of people that come out of this. And the debate I think we can have is on the percentages, right? I think there's going to be a group of people that come out of this that are going to say, look, my life was super simple 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I want business as usual. I want to go be able to sit at a restaurant, elbow to elbow with another table, and have my dinner and it be everything exactly the way it was. And I think most of us could probably figure out in our family which one of the members of our family that would be, right? We know, Uncle Joe, he doesn't like change. So that's going to happen. But I also think there's going to be a large group of people that are clearly impacted by what we're going through and are going to say, look, I need to see some changes in the way products and services are provided. And take your pick. Is it, hey, I'm not going to eat at a buffet anymore. Hey, I'm going to not accept having to walk down an aisle elbow to elbow with people in a retail store. I want space. I want space. These issues that we are facing right now, I think most of the medical experts say aren't really going to go away. We're going to figure out how to manage them better, hopefully. But so you as a business owner, the product or service that you're providing, what do you need to do? What do you need to do? Is now the time to do the online app, that you haven't done before? And how do you need to anticipate what your services are going to need to do to change? Because again, to me, where I think we're uniquely challenged right now is I think you're going to have both those people, right? You're going to have the people that say, I want everything like I used to have it. But you're also going to have this other group of people that say, I really want changes in behaviors and I want to see products and services delivered differently. So how do you do that right now? How do you start looking at those things and strategizing for those outcomes? I think that's just really important for people to take that seriously right now.
And I hope they do.
Yeah.
This is the time to take a step back and evaluate what you can do versus just focusing on what it is that you can't do. And in Southern Ohio, we've got a lot of incredible businesses,
yes,
very smart people, very capable, and I think that this is a time to not draw back, but to take a step forward and do anything you can do to keep your business alive, so that you can come out of this kind of ahead.
And I would really encourage from this dialogue is more that brainstorming and that strategizing together. I think as a community, you and I've had conversations in the past about the fort that we own here in Chillicothe and what our goals and objectives were with it, with information sharing and roundtables and those discussions. Again, not as practical now because of the circumstances that we're under, but we've got different forums, and I would really encourage us as business owners to start sharing ideas and sharing thoughts. We're all going to come out of this stronger and better if we work together. And again, if somebody needs to close the case on their pastries now because people aren't going to want to see something exposed, having those dialogues, having those conversations, and literally having some of those things done. I mean, today, right now might be the time to remodel your storefront, right? I mean, we're challenged with some of the things that we can and can't do. So having a dialogue where we're sharing those ideas and those thoughts and actually taking actionable steps to make those things happen, so that when we do come out of this, and our earlier conversation about what's the definition of a recession or whatever, is that we come out of this prepared, and we come out of this in a position that we're ready to take advantage of people's opportunities and their interests in going back and getting into the commerce and getting back into the normal flow of things. And that's what I think is really important. I think it's a good use of our time right now for sure.
Well, why don't we end it with this? And I hate to ask it because I know no one can give it, but how far ahead do you think do I need to plan on this for a year? What's maybe a rough starting guideline of when I can assume that some form of normalcy might happen again?
So
your opinion.
Total opinion, right? Total opinion. So I think it's the way you said it. I don't know. It's going to be phases. We didn't get into stay-at-home orders with the definition of essential and non-essential work. We just didn't wake up one day and that happened, right? It was, hey, we're not having people come in from China. Hey, the NBA is not playing basketball anymore. Hey, we need to start social distancing. So it was a gradual process for us to get to the circumstances that we're in. I think it's reasonable to assume it's going to be a gradual process for us to go out. So I think with that, in my opinion, I think in the June, July timeframe, we will potentially start to see some areas that start to change, and then add another 3 months to that, and another 3 months to that, as far as getting things back to normal. Now that begs that question, right? To my earlier point, what is normal? I personally don't think we're ever going to go back to normal, right? I think that we're going to come out of this with some rather fundamental changes in how we deliver goods and services to people. So, the short answer to your question is maybe never. So, the point is, from a business standpoint, we are going to come out of this, and we're going to come out of this over the course of the next probably 3 to 6 months, and we're going to come out of it with a way that we need to seriously decide how we're going to deliver our goods and services, because I think we need to change those.
And is your opinion on that based off of the fact that a cure isn't ready? And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, you know, when you say
sure.
like maybe never we go back to what's normal. What do you mean by that?
So what I think I believe what I hear, and I think a vaccine, and I think a cure. When I say never back to normal is so what got us here, right? What got us here was, you know, a pandemic that we didn't know about, and was also a lot of social behavioral activity that creates the petri dish for these kind of things to happen. And that's part of the part that I think is going to fundamentally change with a certain portion of people. Is I think we're going to be proactively taking steps as a society to make sure, you know, pick your name for whatever the next disease or whatever it may be, and we're going to start doing things. We're not going to wait on the World Health Organization. We're not going to wait on CDC to tell us stuff. We're going to start doing things that are more behavior based, that change things. So again, from the business side of it, we need to acknowledge that is a likely outcome for a portion of our population, and we need to tailor our goods and services to start to look at what that means.
Well, it's an interesting dialogue to start, and I'm excited to keep it going on.
And that's why I think, again, we're going to come out of this stronger than ever. We really are. We're going to have a group of people that have worked together in a very positive way to overcome something that's really difficult, and we're going to create efficiencies and better ways of delivering services that people are really going to welcome. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Good. Look forward to talking some more.
Tomorrow.
All right.
So if you'd like to be a part of this conversation even further, type in the Steve Moore Group in your Facebook search bar. We have a private group for Southern Ohio business owners where we're commenting daily, not just us, but the whole community, what's going on, things they're doing, creative strategies they're taking in order to keep their businesses alive and thriving during this time. And there's one other way that you can stay involved, and Steve's going to tell you about that.
So for other questions or comments, specific topics or ideas, what we'd really like is for you just to reach out to the comment section of the Facebook page. We're going to pull through those and find topics that we can address and continue the dialogue here on a regular basis. So thanks for participating, and please give me your comments. Thank you.